The Graal lived for the clash of bone on armor, the roar of a worthy opponent, the singular glory of personal combat. They were a species forged in the crucible of endless planetary war, their bodies slabs of muscle and toughened hide, their minds focused on the purity of strength and the honor found in facing an enemy eye to eye. To a Graal, like Warchief Korgak, whose scarred muzzle and thrice-broken tusk attested to his prowess, anything less was cowardice. Humans, Korgak snorted, the sound like rocks grinding together. He'd seen the reconnaissance data. Frail things, small, soft-skinned. They relied on flimsy projectile weapons, hid behind cover, and most despicably used traps. Traps, the tool of the hunter of mindless beasts, not the mark of a true warrior. Their concept of rules of engagement was a joke, a list of ways to avoid a proper fight. The Grand Korgan Council had sanctioned this raid on the human agricultural outpost designated Greenhaven with a dismissive wave of a massive hand. "Go, Korgak," the Korgan had rumbled. "Gather resources. Test their mettle, if they even possess such a thing." Greenhaven. Even the name sounded soft. Korgak envisioned an easy harvest of supplies and a quick lesson for these humans on the futility of resisting true power. His war party, 24 prime Graal warriors, descended upon the settlement in their armored drop pods, the impacts shaking the very ground. They expected screams, immediate surrender. What they got was a brief, surprisingly sharp resistance from a handful of humans in rudimentary body armor, firing those irritatingly fast projectile weapons. The militia, as they were called. They were no match for Graal shock troops. Korgak himself shattered the defenses of their main strongpoint, his war maul crushing plasteel and flesh with equal ease. Within minutes, the organized defense collapsed. The Graal warriors fanned out, their heavy footfalls echoing through the eerily quiet settlement. Easy, as predicted. But the quiet was wrong. It wasn't the silence of surrender. It was the silence of a predator holding its breath. One of Korgak's warriors, Grul, a younger Graal eager for his first taste of real battle against an off-world species, let out a howl of surprise and pain. He stumbled back, a thin, almost invisible filament wrapped around his ankle, sending him crashing to the ground. As he tried to rise, a weighted net, clearly improvised from agricultural materials, dropped from the roof of a nearby storage dome, entangling him. "Cowardly tricks!" Korgak roared, striding towards Grul, but even as he did, sharp projectiles, more like oversized nails than bullets, whizzed from hidden positions, pinging off his thickest armor plates. They wouldn't kill him, but they stung, they irritated, they distracted. The humans weren't fighting like warriors. They were fighting like vermin. They scurried through irrigation channels, used the tall, swaying grain fields as cover, and laid simple but effective snares. A Graal patrol blundered into a section of ground that had been deliberately wetted down, turning it into a slippery mud patch. As they flailed, humans, ordinary-looking humans in simple clothing, darted out, hurled flammable canisters, and then retreated before the Graal could regain their footing and charge. This wasn't war as Korgak knew it. This was pest control, and they were the pests. His warriors, built for charges and brutal melee, found themselves bogged down, harassed, and increasingly frustrated. Their heavy armor, designed for close quarters impact, made them clumsy in the tight confines of the agricultural structures and muddy fields. During a brief lull, as the Graal attempted to regroup and understand the bewildering tactics of their supposedly fragile foes, Korgak saw something that made his blood boil. A Graal warrior, Drak, lay wounded, his leg mangled by a concealed spike trap. Drak roared in pain and frustration, a sound that should have brought his comrades to his aid, to help him back to the fight or grant him a warrior's end. Instead, the other Graal, following their ingrained battle logic, bypassed him, seeking out active threats. The wounded were a liability, unable to contribute to the glorious charge. Such was the Graal way. Then Korgak saw it. A small human figure, marked with a bright red symbol on its arm and helmet, moved with a strange, deliberate calm towards the sound of fighting, not away from it. It carried no weapon Korgak could discern. It moved low and fast, darting between patches of cover, heading towards a cluster of fallen humans near a burning hydroponics dome. Korgak watched, contemptuous, another soft target. But the human didn't engage any growl. It reached one of the downed humans, knelt, and began working with quick, precise movements, applying some kind of dressing to a bleeding wound. Then, incredibly, a Graal warrior, snarling, spotted the lone human and charged. The human looked up, saw the charging behemoth, and did the most illogical thing Korgak had ever witnessed. It shielded the wounded human with its own body, hunching over them protectively. The Graal warrior, surprised by this bizarre act of self-immolation, paused for a fraction of a second. That pause was enough for a volley of projectile fire to erupt from a nearby barn, striking the Graal in the less armored joints of his limbs, forcing him back. The small, red-marked human didn't flinch, didn't run. As soon as the immediate threat had passed, it returned to its work. Korgak found himself puzzled. This was not the action of a coward. It was the action of a fool, perhaps, but not a coward. Later, Grull, the warrior who had been netted, was dragged, bound and disarmed, into a reinforced storage shed the humans were using as a makeshift prisoner-holding area. His leg was broken from his fall, and his pride was shattered. He expected death, or at least ritualistic mockery. Instead, he was largely ignored, aside from ensuring his bonds were secure. From his position, he could see and hear the ongoing chaos of the human defense. He watched as more wounded humans were brought into a covered area near his shed, and he saw them again, one, then two, then three of those red-marked humans. Medics, they were called. He later learned from the translated snippets of their constant, chattering communication. They moved without weapons, directly into harm's way. Grull saw one medic dash across an open plaza, Grull projectile fire kicking up dust around their feet, just to reach a crying child huddled beside a fallen adult. The medic scooped up the child, checked the adult with a grim look, and then carried the child to a safer area, all while the battle raged. One of the medics, a female by her softer voice and slighter build, even approached Grull's shed. He snarled, expecting a killing blow delivered while he was helpless. Instead, she slid a container of water towards him and a nutrient bar. She looked at his mangled leg, her face obscured by a simple breathing mask and goggles, but her posture conveyed something Grull couldn't name. Not fear, not hatred, something else. She made a gesture towards his leg, then to a medical kit she carried. Grull spat. He would not accept aid from this frail, cowardly species. The medic simply left the water and food and moved on to help her own wounded. But she had seen his injury, and she had offered help to an enemy who would have, without hesitation, crushed her. Through the long, terrifying day and into the equally terrifying night, Grull observed. He saw farmers, men and women whose hands were calloused from tools, not weapons, take up arms. They weren't skilled. They fumbled with their projectile rifles. Their aim was often wild, but they stood. They stood before their homes, their fields, their families, with a grim, unyielding determination that Grull had only ever seen in Graal warriors defending their own sacred Korgan shrines. But these humans weren't fighting for glory or conquest. They were fighting with the quiet, desperate fury of a mother beast defending its young. He saw them share meager rations, comfort the crying, and whisper words of encouragement. When one fell, others would, if the Graal fire wasn't too intense, rush to pull them back, even if it was clear the fallen human was beyond help. This, too, was alien to Grull. A fallen Graal was simply left. Their spirit had departed for the eternal battle. The flesh was irrelevant. But these humans, they cherished even the empty shells of their dead, risking themselves for what seemed to Grull like pure sentimentality. The turning point for the Graal raiding party wasn't a decisive battle, because there wasn't one. It was a slow, grinding realization that this wasn't a fight they could win in the way they understood winning. They had taken the main structures, yes, but the humans hadn't broken. They had melted into the landscape, their resistance becoming a death by 1,000 cuts. Korgak's warriors were exhausted, their nerves frayed by the constant, unseen attacks, the unnerving tenacity of these soft beings. They had killed many humans, but for everyone that fell, two more seemed to take their place, their eyes burning with that same protective fire. Korgak finally gave the order to withdraw. They had taken losses, far more than anticipated. They had secured some supplies, but at a cost that felt disproportionate. As they retreated to their drop pods, harried every step of the way by phantom attackers, Korgak caught a final glimpse of Greenhaven. It was battered, burning in places, but it was not conquered. The humans were still there, still fighting, still enduring. And he saw a medic, silhouetted against a burning structure, kneeling beside a figure, whether human or Graal, Korgak couldn't tell from the distance. Just kneeling in the heart of the chaos, a beacon of something he couldn't comprehend. Graal was left behind. The retreating Graal, in their haste and adherence to their warrior code, did not consider a captured, wounded warrior worth rescuing. He expected the humans to exact their revenge. Instead, after the Graal ships had blasted off, the same female medic who had offered him water returned. She, along with another, older human male whose face was etched with weariness and grief, cut his bonds. They splintered his leg, roughly but effectively. They gave him more water and food. Through a crude translation device one of the older humans brought, the male spoke, his voice devoid of triumph, only immense fatigue. "Why did you come here?" Grull, confused, disoriented, could only stare. He had no answer that this human would understand. His reasons for being here, glory, resources, the thrill of combat, felt hollow even to himself now, faced with this strange, quiet resilience. The news of the Greenhaven raid sent ripples of disbelief through the Graal warrior clans. Korgak's official report was terse. Target hardened, resistance unexpectedly tenacious, resources acquired with notable casualties. Recommend re-evaluation of human combat doctrine. But the unofficial stories, carried by the warriors who had survived, were more vivid. They spoke of humans who refused to break, who used the land itself as a weapon, who fought not for honor in the Graal sense, but with a terrifying protectiveness. They spoke of farmers who became warriors in an instant, their eyes blazing with a resolve that unsettled even veteran Graal. And they spoke, with a kind of hushed awe, of the medics, the unarmed healers who walked into fire. The concept of a warrior who laid down their life not to kill, but to save, was profoundly disturbing to the Graal mindset. It hinted at a strength, not of muscle or armor, but of spirit, a kind of collective resilience that their own honor-bound individualism couldn't easily pass. Grull eventually repatriated in a prisoner exchange brokered by a neutral species, an exchange the Graal initially balked at. Why trade for a warrior who allowed himself to be captured, and worse, treated by the enemy? Brought back the most unsettling perspective. He spoke not of human cowardice, but of a strange, inverted bravery. He described their compassion, their relentless drive to protect their own, even their inexplicable offer of aid to him, their enemy. The Graal did not suddenly become peaceful. They were still a warrior race, but their understanding of humanity shifted. Frail was replaced with deceptively resilient. Cowardly tactics became unconventional and effective strategy. The image of the farmer with a hunting rifle standing defiantly before their home, and the medic walking calmly into chaos, began to seep into Graal legend. These weren't tales of glorious combat, but cautionary stories about a species that, when pushed, when defending what it held dear, possessed a kind of strength the Graal had never encountered before, the strength of unbreakable spirit and selfless protection. They were, in their own strange, illogical way, terrifying. The Graal had gone to Greenhaven looking for a simple fight. They had found a lesson in the true meaning of fortitude.